and welcome to this week's edition of This Weekend Perfect Team. I am your host, DRC, and we are the show that provides instant community feedback on all new content releases, and Chris just tried his best to pull one on us a couple moments ago. He just tried to pull one on us. He tried to think that we weren't getting the 100 bogs. He tried to disappoint us in thinking the 99 was the prize of the set. I think it worked for some people. It didn't work for all. We are coming into this stream, and Chuck just dropped a gift bomb on the community, gifting out 5 different subs to new viewers. Thanks so much, Chuck, and I hope the new viewers enjoy it. If you are new to the show, you are joining at a perfect time. We now have 100% more rewards for watching. So in the past, we've been asked, do you guys have drops? When are you getting drops? Are drops active? Never had them. And we still don't have drops. But what we do have is a perfect point giveaway. 3 people are going to be walking away with 10,000 perfect points at the end of the evening. So we are very excited for that. And look at my buddy West gifting out 5 more subs. Thank you so much. Your support is much appreciated. You guys are working our way to a hype train here. Level 4 hype train. Look at what is going on. Oh my goodness. All right, let's get to business here. So what is on our show tonight? We've got a great one for you. We've got the 12 stash cards. We've got the 1 surprise special edition. We've got OK Boomer, OK Zoomer, which is just about the best game show running in Out of the Park streaming. Might be the only one, but who's counting? And then we're going to finish off with some PTCS roster building tips. We've got some very, very big tournaments coming up, very big tournaments. And I want you guys to know what you need to know to build a good team. And I'm not going to tell you who to get. I'm not going to deliver you a bunch of fish. What Kidneys and I are going to do is we're going to teach you how to fish. We're going to teach you how to use the tools at your disposal to build your best roster, to get the data you need to make the decisions for yourself. So definitely stick around for that. As a reminder, for anyone who is new, here's our program schedule. So on Thursdays, we do this show. On Sundays, I broadcast the Perfect League, and I will continue to do that, the Perfect League World Series, until I'm oh, shoot. Oh yeah, I was relegated on Sunday. So no Perfect League World Series, but I'm working my butt off trying to get back. As it stands right now, I am not even in line for a playoff spot in the DLL, so I've got some work to do. But Tuesdays, we'll definitely have a show on Tuesday, and the Tuesday show is called Reading Between the Lineups. And it's a show with a little bit less hype than this one, but a ton of substance. And the spirit behind that show is getting to know the big names and the big personalities behind this game. We've had Walnut on there. We've had Chris Jardine on there. We've had Mac Jack's 3-time champion on there. We had Aquana Condor on there. And then on Tuesday, we're going to have Pidge. So if you've seen any of Pidge's rants in the Discord and you want to know more about the guy behind the screen name there, we're going to find out on Tuesday. All right, let's jump in and do some cards. And Mac Jacks, look at you. 5 more gifted subs to the community. You guys are just awesome. And by the way, Kidney's stash is much better than mine. I did my best. So I shave every week. I hadn't shaved yet this week, so I trimmed everything but the stash. I didn't really accomplish much. That's pretty weak. I haven't even brought in Kidneys yet. As always, joining me is your Kidneys. How you doing, man?
I'm doing okay. It's been a day. I shaved for the mustache, and honestly, it's not great, but it is much better than I expected it was going to be. So, hey, I'll take it.
It's looking really good. I've got a little bit of stash envy right now, and I feel kind of bad about it. But I'll try to put that aside as wait till next year's dropping a gift bomb on the community as well. Level 5 hype train going right now as gifts are just flying. Thank you guys so much. Overwhelmed. All right, let's start talking about some cards. Dennis Eckersley is where we start. And one of my ethoses in this game, one of the things that I love about this game and the cards that I love are cards that are a little bit on the freaky side. Freaky cards, if you will. And this is a Dennis Eckersley card, and we've got a lot of X in the game already, and most of them are relievers. This is not a reliever. This is a starting pitcher, which means that he's going to get a stuff boost. He's got decent pitch values there, and this is a low silver card. And once you bump this guy to the pen, his stuff's likely to jump into the 80s. And so we'll be looking at a very high stuff, very high control card for silver with very dreadfully low movement. So what happens then? You know, that's a question that I don't exactly know the answer to, but a lot of other freaky cards in the game carve out very useful roles, very useful niches, and have a lot of value. So what I'm curious to hear from you, Mr. Kidneys, if you've talked to our silver tournament expert, what do they think of this card and what kind of impact is it going to have on the scene?
You know, it's interesting. It's definitely going to get a big stuff boost in the pen, which is something I hadn't really thought of looking at it at the first place. I was just like, can this card start? And it's really close. I think the movement is just going to be a little too low. In silver, you start to get an influx of power. There are some people who like to play some more power-heavy team. And so I think really you're going to find an issue where he might just get hit up too often. But it's probably going to be one of those cards we're going to have to wait for the observed statistics to come in more on. You know, my model really isn't set up for silver, so I can't weigh in too much on this angle. But it's interesting. I mean, the control is so high for a silver card. The stuff is great. It'll be even better out of the pen. He's got really high stamina. So, you know, I think it's an interesting card, and it's definitely one that we're going to have to watch and see, you know, what comes of it.
Awesome. And then for anyone new to the broadcast, there's a table on the right side of your screen. And this is something that we build to help contextualize the new cards that drop. And so what you have here is similarity scores. And so these cards here are the most similar to this new card here, to this new Dennis Eckersley. And the way to read this is as follows. Brent Suter +4 stuff, -3 movement would be Dennis Eckersley from a general perspective. And the reason that we have subtables here for versus left and versus right is because that's really where you get into the nitty gritty of what this card's actually going to be. And then you need to contextualize on top of that, the handedness. So it's really not a standout or a tool that just stands on its own. And you don't need to apply some understanding or some knowledge to it, but just rather something to give us a head start in the direction of figuring out what this card is like. And if we're looking at a low silver card here and all of its comps are golds, you're feeling pretty good about it. If we're looking at a low diamond and its comps are high silvers and low golds, then that can tell you that maybe we're not looking at a card that's going to be all that impactful. All right, moving on. Oh, wait a minute. Before we go anywhere, this is my favorite card. And it's my favorite card for those reasons I gave you. That it's kind of a freaky, it's kind of a weird card. I'm interested to see how it's going to play, how that low movement is going to be vulnerable or not. And then Eck in general just had an incredible stash and had an incredible career. So for Eck the player, for Eck the weird card here, I'm calling it my fave. And we move on to Eddie Murray. Eddie Murray, what do we have here? For fans of the stream, what type of profile is this? Who can be first in the chat with it? Who can be first? What type of profile is this? Wait till next year's got it. It's a bird profile. And for anyone who wasn't on that episode, if you take these ratings and you turn them on their side, looks a little bit like a middle finger. And from a production perspective or from a performance perspective, profiles like that don't do so well in this game. And so avoid the birds at all cost. Unless you're in a very, very low level league, and even then your options will be plentiful to be better than that. But as we look at this bird profile Eddie Murray card, we see one that's got acceptable defense. We see one that versus left-hand pitching at least isn't atrocious from a contact avoid K perspective, does give you some power there. What do you think of this one, Kidneys?
Yeah, so it's probably just one of those cards that's just all around. You know, I say this sometimes, but it's just kind of spread out a little bit too much, and then it's kind of its bonus statistic. The good statistic is power, and the reason why we gave the bird profile a name is because power is not the best stat to put your influx into, right? It just doesn't translate that too well into the game. It doesn't give you the most production. It doesn't, help you get hits. Really, it doesn't. it doesn't even really produce the most runs compared to some of the other statistics like avoid Ks or contact does. So just in general, the card is kind of whelming. You can see it on the similarity score. A lot of these cards aren't really cards that see a lot of play. And like even some of them are showing up. Like I know like that bronze card isn't one that I've ever heard of before. So I play a lot of bronze. That's why I'm comparing it to that, or a lot of live golds. So not something I'm too interested in, and he's just an okay defensive first baseman. So,
yeah, I haven't seen many people rocking that Thad Bosley either, but he certainly sounds like a fine gentleman for whatever era he played in. Moving on, we've got Dave Stieb, and I want to pull out your new toy for Dave Stieb here, just as an illustration. We'll use it again later, but Kidneys, through his brilliance, has been able to forecast what type of production any card will have at the highest level. So after we talk about Dave Stieb here, who's got a pretty whelming, I'll use your word here, a pretty whelming profile here. Doesn't really stand out with the stuff, the movement, or the control. Stamina is kind of standard starter stamina. The pitch values aren't so high, so you're not expecting a huge boost as you go to the pen here. But Kidneys, what would Dave Stieb do from a fit perspective at the very highest level?
So my data, I just ran this last week, so it's all current. If we took him and we put him in, it's kind of a mix of Perfect League, DLL, and TBD. So those are probably about the highest level Diamond Leagues and Perfect League that you could get, right? Dave Stieb would rock a 6.87 FIP versus left, a 6.75 FIP versus right, and about a 6.82 FIP overall. So, he's a silver card. Let's not play him, on the highest level, right? As for him being a silver card, again, it's the same thing, pitcher and hitter. He's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. And again, the best stat in Flux is movement, which on the lower levels, we were talking about just before with Eckersley, you really want the higher control, the higher stuff when you're on a lower level tournament basis, right? Those are the cards that are going to succeed, and he doesn't have that, right? He's jacked up in movement, which is the stat you can afford to cut for those kind of tournaments.
So what's a good FIP? You just said that he's going to be around 7. What's a good FIP?
It's probably something more in the 4 range. I don't know exactly, but if you pull up a similarity table, anything that's probably like sub 4.5 to like anywhere below that is probably acceptable.
Absolutely. Pedro's likely around 3.5 for context.
Right. Yeah. So I would say probably 4.5 to like 3.5 being your greatest, right?
Yep. And another call out that I'll give to the table on the right side of your screen in this light blue column called PEL FIP. If any of these players in the similarity score played in Perfect League and had any sort of observed statistics, you would see it here. So when you see a card that has no hits here, you know that it's a card that likely doesn't belong at that very highest level. Moving on, we've got Keith Hernandez of Seinfeld lore. And Keith's got a bit of an interesting profile here. He's going to play some really good defense at first base. To Chris's point on his stream, if he wasn't left-handed, he could likely move around that diamond a little bit in lower level leagues. He's going to be better versus right-hand pitching. It's going to be 83 on the contact, 63 on the avoid Ks. The power's low enough where I think you're going to get a pretty good BABIP score here, but BABIP is definitely not my department, so I'll defer over to the supervisor there, Mr. Kidneys. What do you think of Mr. Hernandez here?
So actually the comparison I got for him, I don't know if I see it on the table. I don't. What I got was Mark Grace. Is there a gold Mark Grace in the game? I think there is. That was what I was thrown out by API. And he said he's just like Mark Grace, but a little bit worse hitting-wise. So probably not going to see too much play in tournaments. I have a funny story about Keith Hernandez, though. So there's a diamond Keith Hernandez, right? And Keith Hernandez, the diamond card, has such good fielding that when I was first starting out to play this year, I was very bad at the game. I totally forgot that Keith Hernandez was left-fielded. I tried for maybe a month to try and get a Keith Hernandez on my team to play third base. And I was very lucky in the fact that I could never find one. I don't know why that I can never find one on the market, but I just couldn't find one. And I never got him on my team, but he was a fantastic card to start out the season as a first baseman. It's a shame he's left-handed, though.
You know, it's funny you share that little anecdote, because I remember when we first started exchanging DMs and notes and things on the Discord, he was one of the names that you mentioned to me as an option for third base. And I remember thinking early on, like, what is this guy talking about? Does he know that Hernandez is a lefty? But I just kind of let sleeping dogs lie. So I didn't correct it in the moment.
I'm ahead of my time. There was a lefty. A good friend of mine was a lefty who played third base in high school. They can do it. I've seen it happen. It works just fine.
If you can dream it, you can believe it, or something along those lines. Going back up a couple chats, or a couple comments in the chat, Quiz Kid calls me out that Bodley, Thad Bodley, or whatever his name was actually an 84 Cub. So that's embarrassing that I didn't know that, given that I think I'm a Cub fan, or at least I claim to be a Cub fan. Now, I was born in 83, so an 84 Cub was a bit out of my my memory, but still no excuse. So I'll wear that one. All right, and this card is also Kidney's favorite. So Kidneys, why did you pick this one? Was it because of your anecdote, or was it a different reason?
It's actually not because of my anecdote. It's because when my mom was growing up, like in her 20s, this was one of her favorite players of all time was Keith Hernandez. She loved the 84-86 Mets, and she just loved Keith Hernandez as a player. Thought she was a fantastic hitter, one of the best hitters she's ever seen, and just a fantastic love too. So just loved watching him play. So that's why he's my favorite tonight.
There we go. And he was fantastic in Seinfeld. I'll just throw that out there too.
Yep. I've seen the clips, so I know that boomer reference.
Next, we've got Raleigh Fingers. A freak in his own right. Ground ball pitcher, really low on the stuff. 62 versus left, 71 versus right. But this is a low gold that's rocking near 90 movement and control on his strong side. So will this card be enough to impact that gold tournament meta? As we look at his similarity scores, you versus right at least, which is his strong side here, you see some silver cards. Silver cards are more prevalent there than gold cards. That normally isn't a good sign. But what are you hearing from API on this card?
So API and the other advisor just think he's okay, but just a little bit worse than some of the other gold relievers out there, and probably not cracking the meta. The comp I got was like David. I don't want to try and pronounce that name on stream, but I will. It's Giusti. And man, he looks okay, but the problem really is those splits, right? So when you're a right-handed pitcher, you're going to play a lot of left-handed batters. And, I don't want to look at chat right now and see how I butchered that name. He has, much lower control versus left-handed batters. He's got the lower movement, lower stuff. And just honestly, he doesn't have enough probably to hold off gold left-handed batters, which I think are very strong. So he's really good versus right, but you really can't afford a specialist probably in the meta.
And in your numbers, when you have someone, and I don't know if you've run this, so this is me putting you on the spot with no prep, so I'll apologize in advance, but have you looked at, say, like a middle reliever and seen what percentage of their plate appearances come against strong side versus offside?
Yeah, I can get that for you if you give me 2 seconds.
I'm sorry, we need it right now.
Yeah. No.
I'm just kidding. Take your time. I can tap dance a bit.
Okay.
While I'm tap dancing, Real Simple Hunter is gifting out a sub to Surefire 10. Thanks a bunch, Hunter. Yeah, and the reason that I asked this question is based on the role type, you're going to get a different percentage against each handedness. So a left-handed reliever is going to face a whole lot more left-handed batters than a left-handed starter is. A left-handed starter is going up against a lineup that's been tuned to beat left-handed starters. And so the reason I ask here is if we see that specialists or if we see that middle relievers get an RVR percentage well above 50, maybe that makes this card a bit more playable. At the end of the day, as a manager, one of your core responsibilities is getting your pitchers in a position to be successful. And that more often than not means getting them against same side hitters.
Right, so I have it here for you. So it's about 27% that a left-handed reliever faces a left-handed batter, and it's about 50% a right-handed reliever faces a right-handed batter, which is about a 5% difference both sides versus the starter. So they're 5% more likely to face the same side, is what it is. So really not that significant of a difference. I actually thought it'd be a little more. Maybe they need to crank up those same-sided sliders, but yeah. So it's definitely not enough to see play for specialists, in my opinion.
Awesome. We'll move on to Ken Phelps. As Simple as gifting another sub. Thanks, Simple. And welcome to the clubhouse there, Bizniff. All right, Ken Phelps here. We've got a bird. We've got another bird. This bird has a really good eye, though. So we'll talk to Mr. Kidneys here and see if that's going to make a difference here. But we're talking gold meta, and we see a lot of yellow in contact and avoid. And that's not something you see often at that level. So is a very strong eye versus right and very strong power versus right enough to make up for what appears to be a DH only profile?
Probably not. I mean, I think it's close. The feedback I got was there aren't a lot of left-handed power bats in gold, and so he kind of has the niche there. Really, the weakness on this card is avoid Ks, and I think when I charted this card, if I'm looking at it now, this is actually the worst card I charted tonight. Is that correct? It is. He actually clocks in worse than the Silver Eddie Murray, and that might be surprising to some people, but the reason for that is the avoid Ks are so low. And really just on an end game level in the meta, you can't afford to have avoid Ks that are this low, right? You can't afford to have avoid Ks that are, probably in gold, I would think, probably sub 60. So he's got some great stats. I know there would be people that this is a great, probably... he might not be budget with the mission, but if you can get your hands on him somehow, an entry pool card just because he's got the high eye, high power for that. But that's probably his niche.
All right, let's use your new toy again. Your new triple/slash predictor, Ken Phelps at the highest level, and I'm going to go ahead and throw out a guess, and we'll see how close I can get. I would put Ken Phelps at maybe 170, 250, 305.
I have him at 120, 206, 410.
Okay. Just going to hit some dingers. Dingers at the highest level. Well below the Mendoza line. What was that on base again?
The on base was 206.
206, yeah.
Which, to be fair, is 80 points higher than the average. So
there you go. All right, Ken Phelps, everyone. Next, we've got Oscar Gamble. Saw someone talking in the chat about Oscar Gamble and needing to win our perfect point giveaway after OK Boomer, OK Zoomer to pick up this card. Now, what I'd say to them is if this card is needed to get that 100 Wade Boggs, then 10,000 perfect points won't get you there. But we'll assume it doesn't. So let's talk about Oscar. What do we have here? We've got another bird profile where the power is the strongest rating. We've got one that is pretty platoony here, much stronger versus right. The 82 contact stands out as a not terrible rating there. From a defensive perspective, not someone you want in the outfield. Probably could be put out there. You see his number one comp there is Nemo Leopold, who was a left fielder that I had in bronze for all of my bronze tourney days, and I didn't like having him out there for sure. So not a glove that's going to add any value there. But what do you think of Oscar Gamble?
I just want to say one thing first before we hit Oscar. So the new Boggs mission is out. It is all 4 Wade Boggs combined. So that is a very interesting development. That means you could certainly get, what was the name of the last card? The Ken Phillips, and play him in entry pool if you wanted. You'll probably be quite accessible for that. But Build the Boggs, as Tech puts it in the chat, is interesting. So we get another bench-like mission. Okay, I'm down with that. 99 Boggs is going to be through the roof, man.
All right, so what are the Boggses? I think there's a high silver, there's a low gold, There's now the 99. What am I missing?
There's another 90, low 90, I believe.
91.
There's a 91 as Dish puts it in the chat. Yep. Yeah, the 72 card is already 72 one is already really expensive because I think it's in like 5 missions already. So
yep.
I'm sure a lot of people probably already have it locked. I think I might have the gold and the silver already myself, but wow, that's interesting. Not what I expected, but makes sense.
Man, I'm hoping that I have that 91. Turns out I don't. Shoot. I'll be giving.
I don't even have the gold one. Oh no, I'm not getting Boggs anytime soon.
Yeah, we'll have plenty of time to talk about Boggs, but good to know about the mission construct there.
Back to Gamble. So Gamble's interesting. We have a little bit better, I think, here of a left-handed bat. One that I think could see probably some play. He's going to be probably DH only with that kind of fielding. Not the greatest base runner, but not terrible because the stealing is what you want if one stat's high. But really killer on the splits, right? You drop the avoid Ks down 11 points. You drop the contact down, 15 points. So I don't know if he plays in gold tournaments. It's going to be probably not, in my opinion, just from what I've seen from other gold cards and watching some other streams and stuff recently. I've been trying to learn a bit more about gold meta.
Next, we've got Al Hrabosky. This should have been my favorite. Just being able to say the name like that was way more fun than whatever I got out of Eck. So I'm going to go ahead and immediately regret that one. But let's look at this this Cardinal card here, 94 rated. Left-handed pitcher, closer, neutral or traditional splits, so more stuff, movement, and control versus strong side there. Fastball, forkball guy, legitimate reliever. Not enough to dent the high-end scene right now in a Diamond League or in Perfect League, but I think that goes without saying. I'll be curious to hear the FIP numbers you have on your end. I think the control in general is also just a bit low for the lack of stuff you're getting. If you're going to stomach a control rating sub 85, you really want to see, especially in a true reliever, stuff well above 125, 130 to make that worth the while. I think you're going to get too much contact here to go with too many walks and make him not very viable, even in a diamond tournament format. But tell me why I'm wrong.
No, you hit the nail on the head exactly, right? If you don't have the high stuff or the high control or both, what's going to happen is with the order of operations, right? It goes walks, then strikeouts, and then the contact plays out, right? And so if you're not preventing them from walking and you're not striking them out, well, they're going to get to contact, right? And you don't want them getting to contact. So the fact that this card, even with 114 stuff, is not that much nowadays compared to a lot of the other high-end relievers. And 80 control certainly isn't a lot nowadays either. So he's really not going to get there too well. I have a pretty good verse left at, just almost touching what we talked about as that borderline FIP at 4.6. Because he's the left-handed pitcher, and these aren't terrible stats, but if you go verse right, he's hitting a 6, and that's just kind of unplayable. So, he'll be good at lower levels. He'll play fine, but probably not a diamond tournament card, probably not a high-level play card.
Yeah, so let me draw your attention to our similarity score table here. Bruce Sutter. So he's basically Bruce Sutter, less stuff, less control. And as we've talked about in the past, control is critically important. And Bruce Sutter is not all that competitive of a relief pitcher arm at this point. So Al is a lefty, Sutter's a righty. So we're not talking apples to apples here. But I think that and then the FIP feedback that Kidneys was providing you tells you what you need to know about this one. Now, we did get a good question in the chat from Atomic Jeff. Maybe that's Atomic Hefe. I'm not sure. But he says, what is the net effect of a pitcher like this having a very limited array of pitchers? In this instance, only 2 pitches.
If that's thrown at me, my understanding is that they're pretty much cosmetic, and I could be wrong on that. Qantas says none whatsoever. I think the only issue would be if you tried to throw him as an opener. I think the amount of stuff he would lose would be astronomical, because he only had 2 pitches, but I'm not sure why you would do that in the first place. So I think outside of that, it's just cosmetic. There isn't really an issue. I think the fastball and the forkball, how that's built in is that's already built into his stats, the stuff, movement, and control, right? So it's already set up how to go.
Yep,
so
you don't really need to
look at those, basically.
You hit the nail on the head there. So we're looking at quantity of pitches and value of pitches when we're talking about a starter moving to the pen. Although you brought up a use case that I honestly wasn't even thinking of when I asked you the question about moving him as a starter, as an opener. And I think given that he has only 2 pitches here and both pitches have high pitch values and he's got high velocity, the stuff degradation would be devastating for anyone trying that move.
Okay, so Qantas says it only matters if he would be a pseudo opener, not a true opener. True openers use relief pitch stuff. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay.
That's helpful. Yeah.
All right, next we've got Todd Jones. And Todd Jones, Tiger, 95. Good velocity. Pretty balanced profile here. You see nines just about everywhere. So 99 or 97 stuff, 90 movement, 95 control. Now this card reminds me a lot of a reliever that I grabbed early, thinking that they were going to be very good, and I actually see that he's the number one comp here, Gene Garber. So when you have similar stuff to this, where you've got good stuff, good movement, good control, but you're a true reliever in the pen, it just never really turns out as good as you think it will. In the pen, stuff this low just doesn't play all that well from a statistics perspective. And Gene Garber was someone that I was always frustrated that I couldn't get nearly the statistics that I was expecting out of. Now, he does compare favorably to Garber overall. He's worse versus right. He gives up 3 control here. I would guess that this is likely a very usable card, maybe even a good card in like a diamond tournament. But in Perfect League, this is not a card that you want to be trotting out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the projections for this card are pretty good for me. And it's like a 5.3 versus left, a 4.6 versus right, and like a 5 weighted. So when I'm saying weighted, I'm saying when you average out what you're likely to face over the course of a season, left-handed batters and right-handed batters as a right-handed pitcher, that's kind of the split. And I think Lifter Kid says it right. This is like a fill card in Diamond if you're new to Diamond League, right? And you're not in like a DLL or a TBD or some tougher Diamond League. You could play this card and probably be actually really good for you in a Diamond League or below. But in any sort of tough Diamond League, he'll be exploited a bit because of the low stuff like you touched on, and certainly doesn't play in Perfect League. But overall, pretty solid card. You could probably throw him out there in a Diamond tourney. He'd be okay. Yeah, I mean, he's solid. So, you know.
Yeah, and the comps that you have in the similarity score table, Bobby Jenks, he's a card that survived for me pretty deep into Diamond. Wouldn't never say that he was good, but a rotatable arm that didn't get you killed and was someone you were comfortable having out there. Wasn't going to give up too many free passes, and so you're just kind of living and dying by his balls in play. Next, we've got Rod Beck.
Yeah, just a note. So, like, I love Bobby Jenks. Bobby Jenks is one of my favorites, but the little difference in the splits is just, I think, a little bit of a killer for me. So I don't know if I play this over Jenks or not.
Yeah, and wait till next year points out this looks very Jerry Roycian out of the pen. I mean, the reverse splits here are very muted here. So 3 on the stuff, 3 on the movement, 1 on the control. But he's not wrong when he says that. Next, we've got Rod Beck, the shooter. One of my favorite Cubs from one of our worst eras, but we did get to the playoffs. I still remember him closing the game down in game 163 with absolutely no stuff. His stuff that game would have been in the 50s. But this stuff on this card here, very split dominant here. So significantly better versus right-handed batters. Good control, solid movement, strong stuff. Where he's weak is versus the offhand. So this kind of reminds me of a poor man's Raleigh Fingers card, where you really got to be careful with how you line this card up. You wouldn't want to have him as your closer and going out to pitch the 9th regardless of lineup composition. You'd really want to do what you could to make sure that he's pitching versus right-handed batters. And that's what you see with his similarity score as well. So versus righty, he's like a better Mariano. He's a better Bruce Sutter 100 because we know that control is more valuable than stuff. There's that Raleigh Fingers comp there. So way lower on the control, a little bit more stuff. So that means Raleigh's going to be a better player. So definitely a card that you can have pitch against right-handed batters. This kind of looks like a Jim Whitney, who is not a starter against that right-hand side there. But what do you think of this card?
I think it's like we were just talking about earlier. The question is, do you think personally that a very split-heavy kind of, does this card play matchups well enough of the time play, right? Because certainly this card versus left, I have it coming in at like a 5.3 versus left, right? But its versus right is good. It's a 3.8, so that's pretty good versus right. It's slightly worse than the Raleigh fingers, right? The 99 Raleigh. So the question is, do you want another 99 Raleigh that's a little splittier? And I'm not entirely sure why you would, but certainly on a budget, this is probably a very obtainable card. Because like realistically, once this card gets populated, and it's in circulation, right, there's no reason for it to be more expensive than the Raleigh fingers. So I would think that this could be a pretty awesome card for you to throw into your pen, if you're a new player to Diamond and something like that. Could be pretty great.
So we see someone pointing out that he's a ground ball pitcher. And that brings me to a point that I wanted to discuss because I honestly don't fully understand it. So we saw the Mariano Rivera card come out, and everyone was quite sure that it was going to knock off Trevor Hoffman as the meta closer. Now, early returns on that Mariano Rivera card have not been very favorable. He has been significantly worse than Hoffman through the end of last week. Now, he has extreme ground ball. And so my question to you, Kidneys, is the ground ball profile something that we want out of our relievers? And can you start to explain away or share your take on why the early returns on Mariano are not there?
So the issue with the ground ball profile is unless you're running a really great defense, just in general, ground balls in OOTP have a higher BAPIP than they do than fly balls, right? So if you're a ground ball pitcher, your BAPIP is going to be higher than fly balls, right? So actually, fly ball pitcher is a benefit. A lot of people think fly ball pitcher, I give up more home runs. That is not necessarily true. If you have the same movement as a ground ball pitcher and you're a fly ball pitcher, you will give up the same amount of home runs. It does not change your home run tendency. It just means you will give up more air outs instead of ground outs. So being a ground ball pitcher actually increases your balls in play. So unless you have a really, really good defense, like you're running Ozzie Smith, you're running, Pop Lloyd up the middle, something like that, you are going to be struggling in certain scenarios. So I don't really buy completely into Mariano was super bad in 1 week. He's not going to be great because he's an extreme ground ball. I think that's a bit of a fluke. But I think he might be worse than we expected because of it, yes.
So am I hearing that across the board, we should be preferring the fly ball pitcher profile and actually grading down the ground ball pitcher, or am I misinterpreting what you're saying?
I think neutral is the worst. I still think ground ball is a plus, but that's because I love defensive style teams. If you're somebody that doesn't like defensive style teams, if you prefer offense, you prefer the high WAR numbers and things like that, maybe ground ball isn't for you. I think fly ball is almost always a plus, but it's such a rarity on cards. For example, I know a while ago now, but when we got that Kurt Schilling in the playoffs, the gold card that had fly ball on it, I was all excited for gold tournament, saying this card could be way better than expected because it had fly ball on it. And maybe I'm reading into it a little bit too much, but I think there's some merit to it, yes.
And a card like Bobby Matthews has probably held on longer and been better than it should be otherwise based on its backup card ratings. So I'm starting to think that there's some fire to this smoke. Moving on, we've got Rich Gossage, 99 rated Yankee card here. And whereas we were talking about not having enough stuff for some substandard control before, we've got a lot of it here. So Gossage versus his strong side is bringing you 142 on the stuff to go with some very strong 93 movement. So he's going to be missing a lot of bats, and he's going to be preventing a lot of home runs versus his same side hitters. Now the control is sub 90, and right around 90 seems to be the floor where it's not problematic in very high level leagues. Now I do expect Gossage to be competitive versus the same side, but I worry about that control even versus righties, and then we know that versus lefties he's going to be in a lot of trouble. As we look at his similarity scores, we see another comp to Bruce Sutter here. So we've seen Sutter on a lot of these comp tables. He's basically Sutter with a bunch more stuff versus righties, but giving 5 on the control. Probably not a trade that you want to make He comps pretty close to Lidge with a ton more control. But what does your FIP projection say for Gossage here?
So I actually have Gossage worse than Beck and Jones. He actually has the exact same. Did I paste the right number? I might have. Hold on a sec. Let me double check my number because I have him with the same exact number.
It wouldn't surprise me because he would be just so problematic.
No. I
versus
pasted the
lefties.
wrong number.
Okay.
I pasted the wrong number. Yeah, that's on me. Yeah, so that's better than I expected then. So his FIP versus right is pretty good. It's a 3.9, but his FIP versus left is really bad. And that would be because low control, low movement, very low control, very low movement, and not enough stuff to supplement it, right? So it's like a 5.9. Which is probably too high for him to ever really see play on a competitive level. He's so shut down v right, but he's so weak v left. This is really like the definition of a specialist, but I just don't think that's a model that sees playing out of the park. We were discussing earlier the different splits and matchups you see for relief pitchers. We've gotten so many good relief pitchers tonight. Shout out to Chris if he's still watching. I love seeing some relief pitchers for a change. Really excited we got so many of them. But I'm not so sure about this one just because I don't believe in specialists and out of the park right now in the current meta.
Yeah, and as we're talking about running true relievers in high-level league play, you've got a lot of really good options now. So as much as I just question the efficacy of Mariano Rivera, he's still someone that you're going to want to have in that ultimate pen. You've got Hoffman, we've mentioned. You've got Eric Gagne. You've got Liam Hendricks. And I don't know that you'd ever need to have more than 4, or that you'd ever want to, with the flexibility and versatility that converted starters give you. So I think it's definite that Gossage isn't denting any sort of high-level meta here, but perhaps in a diamond tournament or in a lower-level play, you bump into this card, and you can ride him in the pen as you move up the ladder. Next, we've got 99 Wade Boggs. And the first thing you notice is that for the first time tonight, we've got some hits on our PEL OPS table. So you're able to comp him to other players that are actually logging statistics in the Perfect League. And the second thing you notice is that he's really a throwback. You know, Wade Boggs is not someone that profiles similarly to people that played in his same era. He's like Dan Brothers, Cap Anson, Roger Connor. And we know that profile has been very, very sticky in this game. Roger Connor has been going to be replaced for months now. And every time a new card comes around that's supposed to knock him off the meta position at first base versus right, they either aren't better or they're only arguably better. And you still see people rocking a Roger Connor. And I think that this type of profile, which is high contact, high avoid, lower power with good eye, is just that. And that's what's really the magic behind here. Now, from a defensive perspective, and I want to be conscious about how much time we spend on the 99 Boggs, given that we're going to be rehashing it with a better Boggs in just a couple of minutes here. But defensively, you can absolutely get away with this at third base. You can get away with this at first base. What do you think of this 99 card?
Yeah, the question is Diamond Tourneys. I didn't actually hear feedback. I forgot to message our Diamond Tourney expert. I don't know. I'm trying to think off the top of my head who has stock Diamond Tourney third base rating. Maybe chat can help me out here. Chat, do you know who has stock Diamond Tourney third base rating?
Cap Anson.
Cap Anson.
I mean, so, Cap would play a lot worse of a third base.
And George Brett. No, George Brett's perfect. So not George Brett. So it's really just Cap Anson. Maybe up there with him. So I don't know. Maybe this card sees play for sure.
I think you could do a ton worse than this card versus right in a diamond tourney. I think this card's going to hit very well. And if you've already got Roger Connor at first base.
I'm seeing a lot of the names up there, and other than Cap, it doesn't look very great. So, many left-handed pitchers in decap meta. Oh, okay. So maybe maybe you still want Cap up there, but if you're not going for Cap Anson, maybe this is your play. So I think he could see play there. If you're new to Perfect Team 21, or perhaps you didn't play Perfect Team 20, this is going to be the bottleneck of the year. This is what we call a bottleneck card. What that means, if you're new, and 20 had a lot more of these than 21, but what that means is there's a mission card that you have to complete a very expensive mission, and this card may be one of the most expensive cards you've ever seen in Perfect Team.
So I guess maybe we can save this question for when we talk about the 100 card, because the value of this card is tied entirely to how badly people want the 100 card. No one's going to be breaking themselves to buy this card to play it, but they'd be breaking themselves to buy this card so that they could be one of the few with the SE. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. Here is the 100 SE, and if you toggle back and forth, you see that the thumb got put on the scale between the 99 and the 100, getting about 10 points or thereabouts on each rating. A little bit better across the board, including the defense. So the defense goes from being good at third base to being very good at third base, with very competitive range, a good strong arm, the turn DP, which isn't going to hurt you too much there, a strong infield error rating, although error rating could be the least valuable of all of the defensive metrics. From a hitting perspective, you see a lot of blue where you want it, and then you see the lower power, which helps you in that BABIP department, which I'm sure Kidneys is going to talk about here. And then on the off side, the versus left side, you see that shortcoming really shored up a bit. Now, 99 contact and 93 avoid isn't perfect by any means, but a whole lot more competitive. And as we look at the bat similarity scores, you see a ton of hits here. And the hitters you see, again, are mostly dead ball type players that have proven to be very effective at the very highest level, and in cards that are still played routinely today. Jackie Robinson, Roger Connor, Cap Anson, Dan Brothers. So very competitive cards there. Literally the only cards that are hits here that are not played today are Jackie 100, which is mostly not played because everyone has Jackie SE, Cap Anson 96, which isn't played because people have Cap Anson 99, and then the Wade Box 99, which doesn't play because no one has it yet. So what do you think of this 100 card, and just how good is it going to be?
You know, I think this card is outstanding. The question to me is, where do you play him? And everybody already is going first base. I don't actually know if that's completely the case with this card. And the reason I say that is because I don't know. There's a lot of talk going on around right now is, do you cut the defense out of your middle infield? And I feel like if you cut the defense out of your middle infield, you could play this at third. You could keep Connor at first. Maybe you put Hornsby at second, and even, throw like I can't believe I'm going to say it, Jackie at shortstop, and you run like a really offensive heavy team. I don't know. I think there's a lot more utility to this card than people are giving credit for. I think there's no doubt in my mind this card is better Connor. I really want to shout out Chris and the team for not putting power on this card. Wade Boggs is not known for his power, but recently in months, we've seen a lot of cards just get an inflated power number with all their other numbers. And this card is so much better because his power number is inflated, because with his high avoid Ks, it keeps his BABIP at a playable rate. And if his power number was 20 higher, we'd see a BABIP like Cal Ripken, and I'd be debating whether I could play this card, right? This card is fantastic. It's just across the board, in my opinion, better than Connor. It trains up to about a 101 at first base if you're going to play him there. And I really just think it's like an outstanding play.
And I think that the lefty cheese play, or going hard lefty, just became a lot more competitive with this card. Like the George Brett card was not bad by any means, but I felt like he gave a bit with the on base, and month to month the slugging wasn't there to make up for it. And so throwing him over there at third was less exciting to me than having a more balanced lineup with, say, Hornsby at third and then Jackie at second. I think with this Boggs there being a better version of George Brett at third base, I don't know George Brett's defense off the top of my head, but I think this Boggs is going to be better than it, and I think the bat's going to be better as well. And then when they do run into a left-handed pitcher, I think he's going to be better there too. So I think across the board, it just becomes a more viable play. And honestly, who might lose the most at bats with this card dropping could be Jackie Robinson. For people that choose to go Hornsby over Robinson and then maybe save Robinson for a VL platoon, or God forbid, even not play Robinson. What are the triple slashes that you have for this card?
This is very nice triple slash. So I have a 270, 351, 761 weighted. So that's like what you're going to expect to see in perfect. And if you put a 761 up, so I'm generally a little low compared to observed statistics. You can see Roger Connor's observed is a 770. I would suspect this card supersedes that. You also have to remember Roger Connor might be being platooned in a lot of scenarios, right? In Perfect League. This card's right-handed slash is 286, 367, 800. I don't know. I just think this card plays. I can, if you pull up like my Connor comparison, which I had prepared, Connor is 260, 333, 734, right? Mm-hmm. And I said this card is 270, 351, 761. So it's just better across the board. I have this card just better across the board than usual, except for the slugging. But I mean, usual grades out really highly in my model, and this card I have better. And I have this card better than LeMahieu. I still think LeMahieu is an underplayed gem right now for a lot of people, but yeah, I think this card just absolutely is a must-have, must-run on pretty much every single team. Is why I'm so confident the 99 is going to be such a high bottleneck, and I just think you have to play this.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there. So Marksman asking in the chat about this 703 number for Connor. This is actually the Connor number versus left. His versus right, I think, is above 800. So that is a typo there, and that should be his VR number. I'll check that out and get that fixed. But yeah, Connor versus right is much better than this. And as we compare Connor to this Boggs card, he's basically Connor with more contact and more eye, giving up 3 avoid K. So I tend to agree with Kidneys that he's going to be a better mousetrap at that point than your Roger Connor 98, who again has been the king of first base for as long as I can remember and may just be going down with this card right here.
So I see a question in chat I want to answer. How does higher power negatively affect BAPIP? So I love this question. So let me get to this question first, just real quick. So how BAPIP works is contact isn't actually like a real stat. There is no contact like rating. What it is BAPIP plus power plus avoid K. So when you see 110 contact, you can really like substitute the power and substitute the K, and the leftover is the BAPIP. So if it's just a simple like 1 + 1 = 2 equation, right? If you did 0.5 + 1 = 2, you have 0.5 left over. That's your BAPIP. So if the power is higher, you have less left over to be the BAPIP, if that makes sense. If not, you can just send me a DM and I'll try and explain it to you. Yeah.
All right. Well, that is our set. We've got the Eckersley, that was my favorite. The Hernandez, that was Kidney's favorite. We've got the Boggs 99 and the Boggs 100. A fun, memorable mustache content set that Chris put together. Very happy with this, and I'm more than elated that we got the 100 topper that apparently was called in at the very last minute. Thank God he received that phone call. If that call came in 5 minutes later, we'd still be without the 100 Boggs. All right, so what happens now? Well, we've got our 7th inning stretch. And what is our 7th inning stretch? Why, it's Out of the Park's favorite game show, Okay Boomer, Okay Zoomer. And the spirit of this game is as follows. I show Kidneys 3 things from the 90s and see if he can identify them. And he will show me one horrific and horrible Zoomer meme from today, and I will try to pick up those pieces. Let's jump in. First, we start with a toy. What is this toy, Kidneys?
Just gotta wait for me to load because I gotta put a delay. What is that toy? I have no idea.
It's pretty
Almost
stretchy.
reminds me of He-Man, but it's not He-Man, so I don't know.
It's pretty stretchy.
It is stretchy.
Stretchy toy. Stretch.
No.
This right here is none other than Stretch Armstrong, which was, I think it was a big toy that predates the 90s, but definitely had a comeback within the 90s and was one that I know was in my household, and I think many others like me.
There's my dad putting in the chat, so I know it's got to be old.
All right, 0 for 1 for Mr. Zoomer here. Next, I've got a list of diseases here. So this is a little weird for this game. We don't often touch on serious subjects like this. But what popular game from the 90s was this a list of the possible ways that you could die in?
Popular game in the 90s had this as a list of ways I could die in?
Don't look at the chat.
I have no idea.
So it's
funny though, but I don't know.
So the game itself was Oregon Trail. Have you heard of that?
Oh yes, I know Oregon Trail. Okay, I should have known by dysentery. I should have known from dysentery.
Yeah, I
know the dysentery meme.
The dysentery has been memed up. I thought you had a good chance of this one.
Yeah. No, I've disappointed several of my friends. I will be chewed out in Discord later.
So I played this game. I played the hell out of this game. And I did so off of a floppy disk. Whatever predated the floppy disk. Someone in the chat might need to remember what that is. But not like the little discs that became very popular and were hanging around. I'm talking about like the big ones that were more fragile, whatever those were called. Yeah, the 5.5 floppy. But that's how I played this game. And when you lost a member of your party to something stupid like drowning as you're fording a river or being exhausted, it's like, come on, man. This is the Oregon Trail. You can't die of exhaustion. We're going to strike it rich. We're going to hit gold out west. Come on. All right, moving on. All right, this one is a multi-choice for you here. So I looked at, actually T-Chuck looked at each of the years in the 90s and pulled the top rated show. There were 7 unique shows among those 10 years. How many of those 7 shows can you name?
I'll tell you when it pops up.
You're not going to get any hints on the screen here. You just need to recite some top rated TV shows from the 90s. And there are 7 total.
Well, it's got to be Friends.
Friends. I'm going to take notes here and denote what you call out.
Was Home Improvement 90s?
I like the guess. We'll put 10 seconds on the clock.
Yeah, that's all I got.
I've mentioned one of these earlier in reference to one of the cards.
In reference to one of the cards?
Mr. Hernandez.
Oh, Seinfeld. Those 90s?
Yeah, man.
80s.
Oh, come on. All right, I've heard enough out of you, Zoomer. So here were the 7 shows. Cheers.
Oh. Okay.
Roseanne.
No, never heard of it.
You never heard of Roseanne? That came back.
Nope.
That came back in recent years before getting canceled. Home Improvement, Seinfeld, ER, Friends, and last but not least, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire?
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was the top show? Huh?
Yeah, 1999. It was actually the top 3 shows.
The year I was born.
Yeah, like they had 3 filmings in 99. They had a Tuesday show, a Wednesday show, and a Sunday show. And those 3 filmings beat everything else.
That's crazy.
Yeah, crazy. All right, moving on. So now it's time for Kidneys to get me back. Now, it's hard to give you any credit for what you've gotten so far because you basically named 3 out of 7 shows and then completely biffed for the first 2. So if I get anything resembling the answer here, I'm absolutely claiming victory.
You're not getting it this week.
Here we go. Wait, it's always baseball, always has been. I've seen this.
But can you tell me the origin of it?
I have seen this meme, and I saw this I want to say a couple of years ago when the Ohio stuff was going on. The weird, like, Ohio's taking over the world. Ohio's going to invade Canada. And I saw this, and I want to say it was a globe with Ohio in the middle, and it said, "Wait, it's all Ohio." And then the other one says, "Always has been." But that's about all I can tell you about it.
You absolutely nailed it. You did it.
No,
you have stumped the Zoomer.
Now, what was the Ohio thing? Because I never got why the Ohio thing existed. I just saw it on Twitter because whenever a meme makes its rounds around Twitter, I am an absolute Twitter addict, and so once it infiltrates that sphere, then I've got a good chance of guessing it. I still don't really understand where the Ohio thing came from. Do you know, or is that just a Zoomer thing that doesn't really make a lot of sense?
It's a Zoomer thing. So apparently 2016, somebody posted a photo of a billboard that somebody put up somewhere that's saying Ohio will be eliminated. And then people started making memes about it. And it's just like Ohio is going to try and take over the world in response. And it just blew up and it went viral.
All right. Well, I think what's clear tonight is that we've had a resounding DRC victory, and I'm feeling just on top of the world as we transition to our final segment as we leave this one. But before we get into this final one, I promised that we do the giveaway. Let's go ahead and do that. So let me do what I need to do on my end, and I'm still getting good at this, so I could screw this up. So let us press this button. And that should trigger a giveaway. Let's see if it worked. It did. So if you put in the chat, !ticket, then you will have an opportunity to be one of 3 winners. Each winner is going home with 10,000 perfect points. And when the competition is over, when the contest is over, I need you to DM me on Discord your perfect team username with appropriate capitalization. And then we'll get you those points as soon as possible. So we'll let that run for a minute as we jump into this next segment. So what we wanted to do for this next segment is give you some roster building tips. And this is really relevant for anything. It's not just for the PTCS tournaments. It's not just for regular tournaments. It's not just for your main team. It's for a general method to building out good teams. And so we're really trying to teach you guys how to fish a bit here. And honestly, going through this is something that even experienced players can remember some steps that they're maybe skipping along the way. And there could be some productive dialogue and understanding about how different people go about building teams differently. So let's jump in. So what is the way to build a team? In my opinion, the best way to build a team is you start with gathering data. Data at the core of every decision. And now model guys might say, skip the data, don't need it. Or maybe they've already got the data that has built their model, and it's not really a critical step in the process. As an observed stats guy, it always starts with the data. And after I've got the data, I like to consume the community content. There's a ton of people out here doing hard work, whether it's Sanji sharing his insights on the Discord or Angered Unicorn streaming top tournament cards. Like, there are so many informed people that are more than happy to share their insights with you and make sure that you're not leaving those stones unturned. From there, do the work. So you've got your own data, you've observed or consumed someone else's data. Now it's time for you to do your work, crunch the numbers, and figure out how you want to go about building that team. And then after you've done the work and you've made sense of the data that you have, go ahead and build your team. So before we get into this, I'll go ahead and give one more reminder for the Perfect Point giveaway. We will close this down in another minute or so after we get through the gathered data piece. So Kidneys, before I get into each slide, is this approach similar to yours? Or
yeah, absolutely. And even if you wanna build a model, you have to gather data very similar to what you have here. You have an excellent the picture you showed on stream. If somebody wants what to gather, that's an excellent baseline for what to gather for data. To do your own work, to build your own model, to do something like that. If you need help working on something like that, feel free to DM me. I can help the best I can. I'm not the greatest at it, but I can certainly get you started in the right direction.
Okay. Exclamation point ticket in the chat if you want to be part of the drawing. We'll draw that in just a second. All right, so let's talk about the gathering data piece. So what does gathering data mean? It means, to me, it means going into the tournaments that finish for you and do wait for the entire tournament to finish. If you lose in the first round and you pull your statistics then, you are leaving a lot of data on the table. Let that tournament run all the way through and then grab the entire tournament's worth. And as it goes to gathering data, best of sevens are going to have a lot more data than best of fives, which are going to have a lot more data than best of threes, which are going to have a lot more data than do or dies. So I recommend doing this with your best of seven tournaments and spending every waking tournament hour between now and when you need to submit that roster for PTCS, whether you're part of the early batch or whether you actually have another couple of weeks, getting all the data and throwing that at your spreadsheet that you can. So you go into the tournament, you go down to statistics, you then click on sortable stats. You then build out what extract you want. And for anyone who wants to know exactly what my extract is, I've got it on the screen. You can watch the VOD, you can pause it, you can do what you want. This is not the best extract. This is what I work with. It's got a lot of what I think you need, and you're probably not missing much here. And then once you've got your extract built, then you click this Write Report to Disk button. And after you've done that, you've got it in an HTML browser, and you can press Control A. Pressing Control A is going to grab everything in that browser. Press Control C to copy it all, and then go to your spreadsheet, and then press, I like to right click and click Paste Special Values so you don't get the HTML formatting. But if you like the formatting, go for it. All right, let's go ahead and draw the drawing. Last call, exclamation point ticket. I'm going to close it in 5 seconds. 3, 2, and 1. Now we're going to draw 3 winners. Winner number 1 is Burner Guy 2148. We've got a burner as our first winner. Next winner is the one and only Pidge. And last, we've got Tom Budo Man. So guys, DM me your out of the park username with appropriate spelling, appropriate capitalization, and then we'll get you those 10,000 perfect points. And we will be doing giveaways on all my streams going forward. So that means if and when I get to broadcast the Perfect League World Series again, if I make it back into Perfect League, that means my Tuesday stream where we go reading between the lineups. So make sure you join us for all of that. All right, next, consume community content. And first thing I want to do here is call out Angered Unicorn. He does such a fantastic job on his streams of going through different tournament metas, walking you through the numbers behind everything. So he's not giving you a raw ranking saying, hey, here's a shortstop you need. He's saying, here's the top X shortstops and what they're good at. And you can make your own decision. Now, he'll tell you which one he recommends. He'll tell you which ones are in his opinion, the ones you need. But he's done this for a long time. I think he's recently amped up his content as well because of the impending PTCS. So if you're out there looking for a community member to help guide you through some of these tough decisions, I definitely recommend checking out his channel and check out anyone else who's doing this. I'm sure that I'm neglecting to mention other people that do similar type work, whether it's on the Discord and sharing information there, or it's on Twitch somewhere. I feel bad that I'm missing you, but definitely seek out whoever else is doing stuff like this because it can be an absolutely critical and very valuable resource to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Go follow Angered Unicorn. The guy is amazing. I've been watching a lot of his content whenever he streams. I put the link in the chat for you guys to go follow him. He goes live like 2-3 times a week. And his stuff is high, incredible quality, pulls a lot of data, and he runs numbers, and he pumps out, what's great at what positions and things like that. He's a fantastic streamer, great all-around guy. Just love his content. So go give him a follow, and it's great.
Definitely give him a follow and jump into those videos on demand. Yep, absolutely. All right, so you've consumed community content, you've drawn your own data. Now it's time to do the work. So I talked to you before about getting that data into Excel. Now, once it's there, what do? Well, you're going to need to get comfortable with a little thing called a pivot table, and you're going to need to be honing in on certain metrics that matter. And as you do so, you can break it down by position. You can look at WAR, you can look at OPS, you can look at play percentage, you can look at whatever you want. But you need to graduate from having a spreadsheet of a bunch of raw data into having a spreadsheet that is suggesting to you the moves you want to make based on the data set that you have. So as you can see from this screenshot here, I've got it sorted by WAR. So if you were just playing a WAR max strategy, you could just take the top guy of all these. King Kelly and Mauer, your catchers. Hornsby's going to play first for you. Maybe Connor's going to play first and Hornsby's going to play second, as you can only play Hornsby in one spot, obviously. And then you throw Jackie out at short. Now we'll get into the metrics that we feel are most important by position, and Kidneys and I actually don't agree on this. We'll do that on the next slide. But you need to graduate from just having raw data to having data that is pushing you in a certain direction and using metrics to do so. All right, so we have done the work. We have gathered data. We've looked at the community. And now it's time to build a darn team. So how do we go about building the darn team? Well, what Kidneys and I did here, and we'll walk through it in a second, is we looked at every position. And then we talked about the metrics that steer us most heaviest for that position. Now, for me, there are a few positions where I'm just looking at one metric and saying, okay, that's the metric and that's my guy. There's a lot of things that you need to contextualize here. As you're building a team, maybe you look up and you see that your team is really low on base. And you're going to need to rectify that at some point. And so you can't just build a team in a vacuum. You need to see the strengths and weaknesses of that team emerging as you're building it. But just from a core, what do I look at by position? That's kind of what Kidneys and I are presenting to you guys tonight. So we'll start with catcher. So what I look at most with catcher is the catcher defense rating. So I definitely don't want an absolute slob back there who's going to be hurting my pitchers, who's going to be getting run on like crazy. So catcher defense does matter to me, but I'm not just going to trot out the best defender at catcher. I don't play Pudge at the highest level. I played Roy Campanella because I also care about WAR for the position. So simply stated, or I guess there's some nuance to it, I prioritize catcher defense, but I don't let that usurp and overcome a wild deviation in WAR. Now, Kidneys, talk us through the metric that you most harshly judge catchers by.
I don't know. We could have secondary metrics. No. So obviously, right, like you have to balance it out. Like I'm not going to take a gold Bob Boone over a Joe Mauer, right? But in general, what I'm going to go off of is I'm going to go off of CERA, and I'm going to look at the catchers who have the highest catcher ability, because what that does is it actually impacts your pitchers in a positive way and makes them throw better. And I think I get the most benefit. Yes, not Piazza. I get the most benefit out of my team when I have catchers that are helping my pitchers out the most. So what I do is I run Pudge and I run Mauer, and those are my 1-2 punch normally for my catchers at my level.
And so I'm Campanella Mauer. So you see the slight nuance and difference between us. So because for me, Campanella's WAR is significantly higher than Pudge's, I go ahead and bite the bullet and take the defense downgrade there, whereas Kidneys prioritizes that defense. Moving on to first base. So I go mostly WAR on this, but I also like to see on base out of my first baseman because on base can be hard to find in other positions. Now, Kidneys, you've chosen Woba. Talk us through that.
So the reason I go Woba is I can be a bit of a troglodyte. And the reason I like Woba is all about me big stick, me hit baseball far. And the cool thing about that is WAR kind of factors in some things I don't really believe in too much. I'm not a real big small ball guy. I don't like stealing bases. And WAR is, a little bit of defense mixed into it. When I'm picking a first baseman, I want big ball smash time, and I can judge whether their defense is acceptable or not, pretty easily off the cuff, right? So as long as I'm not playing a guy who's like, 20 range and whatever, they're probably playable at first base. So, you can have like a Roger Connor, Hank Aaron platoon, or now a Wade Boggs, Hank Aaron platoon at first base. Pretty acceptable, and they'll smash the ball. So that feels good to me.
And that's what you want out of that first base spot in the lineup. Now, Vinsanity asks a good question of how we deal with postseason WAR adjustment for non-tourney data. And that's probably a question best saved for when we get to shortstop. So let's pull that back up when we get to shortstop. All right, so second base. I've got play percentage. We'll just do shortstop at this time too. So for second base and shortstop, I've got play percentage as the number one thing I'm looking at, and then I'm contextualizing that through WAR, and you've got WAR for both. So let me start with mine here. So what is play percent? If you've ever looked into the various categories of data you can extract from Out of the Park, they categorize each batted ball into 6 buckets. I won't be able to recite the buckets for you. But they're akin to like routine plays, expected plays, difficult plays, impossible plays. I'm butchering it, but it basically grades them by how likely the player is to be able to make that play. And so what I like to do is take all of the plays made for the plays that are not deemed impossible and have that as my numerator, and then put as my denominator all of the potential plays, and then calculate a play percentage by player. And so this is not fielding percentage. Your fielding percentage for anyone is going to be 95% plus. And then based on their error rating, it's either going to be higher or a lot higher and get you closer to 98, 99. Play percent is not that. So your Luke Appling will get a very high play percent, even though his fielding percentage is going to be a full point down from a Poploid or down from other competitive options there. So I want for my second base and my shortstop to have very high play percentages so that any ground ball hit up the middle, I've got a really good chance of making that play. But I'm not just going to take the very best glove. I'm also going to take a peek at WAR and try to min-max a bit there and get some offensive juice out of those players that have a high threshold of play percent. So, Kidneys, why don't you talk us through the WAR?
So the reason I like WAR here is because I just want an overall the best player at the position, and I feel WAR does a pretty fair job of evaluating defense when it comes to Out of the Park, as long as we're not looking at those icky after the season stats. So when it comes to that, I think I've kind of over time become more of a Mac Jack's disciple, where you can WAR max pretty effectively. And so I think it does a good job of balancing the offense and the defense when it comes to choosing a player.
Absolutely. And I think WAR max, and maybe I just need to try it to be able to retire it, because WAR max would tell you to throw Jackie at short, and WAR max would tell you to put Hornsby at second. And, we don't see people doing that. So maybe that is the optimal strategy. And no one's just got the guts to prove it, because Jackie's play percentage is actually sub 70, whereas your meta options like Ozzy are in the high 70s. So we're talking about 10% delta of plays all season long that Ozzy makes and Jackie doesn't. And so does Jackie's bat make up for that? I don't know. WAR would suggest that it does. Now, what Vinsanity asked before of how do we deal with postseason WAR adjustment for non-tourney data, I think that when we extract data at the end of a season, we're missing something. That postseason WAR adjustment is obviously strongest for players with super elite defense like Ozzy, where he can jump from a neutral or even negative WAR to being a meaningfully high WAR. And then you see lesser defenders jump less. So I don't know the answer, but I know that the existence of that jump and the existence of what I see to be an effect where lower defense shortstops and lower defense second basemen hurt you lead me to believe that there's some impact there. And that's why I do prioritize play percent over WAR to a degree.
So I can explain that jump if you want.
Go for it.
So what it's doing is it's actually normalizing. And if I remember this right, and it's been a while, so maybe I don't. Someone in chat can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe what it's doing is it's correcting back to the baseline, and I think it's comparing players to the baseline rather than players against the league, right? So if you're comparing Ozzy to the baseline versus Ozzy to other Aussies, well, he's going to look a lot better compared to that baseline, right? And so that's why you see his zone rating shoot up so high and his war goes up so much, right? So I believe that's what happens at the end of every season, and why if you look back on old stats, they look so exaggerated for defensive like stars.
Mm-hmm. And Dishnet posted the names of those buckets in the chat. It's routine, likely, even, unlikely, and remote. So those are the ones I use. I do not use impossible. Impossible is the 6th bucket that's in there, but the impossible plays cannot be made, so I pull them out of the equation. All right, moving on. We've got third base. Now, I choose war as my number 1 here, and I contextualize that with play percent, placing a pretty strong emphasis on war, and you go Woba here. Walk us through why.
Same thing kind of as first base, but it's just really because I don't prioritize third base defense very highly. Now that said, like I do set minimums, so like if you have like probably less than 75 range or whatever, I'm not going to consider you a third baseman. Like you don't meet my criteria to fit into my WOBA category, right? So I would probably be WOBA and then war in small brackets, right? Mm-hmm. But that said, I would rather pick WOBA than war because I'm not prioritizing defense and I don't really care about stolen bases. It's just really how I play the game. So I would rather have the player with the biggest bat at third base, get me another big bat in my lineup, somebody that can hit the ball, hit hard.
Yeah, and I'm on my side, just going to let war do the dirty work of telling me who the best player is here. You know, give me the person who butchers the least amount of balls and bashes the most, and do the weighting yourself as a calculation of war to tell me who's the guy that comes out on top. My tournament teams sometimes have a guy more bat heavy coming out with this approach. Sometimes I get someone very glove heavy, but regardless, I'm happy with what I end up with. So let's take a look at outfield. So I'm going to go ahead and populate them all at the same time here. So for me, left field and right field, I just, similar to third base, let war do the dirty work for me and tell me who to play. Tell me who's going to hurt me the least with the glove and help me the most with the bat, and you weight that yourself. And then for center field, I kind of take a page out of my second base shortstop playbook here and really weight play percentage here. And then I'll contextualize that with war. So let's say a couple players had similar war in center field. I'd go with the guy who had the higher play percentage there. Now you go WOBA for left field and then war for center and right. Tell us why.
So left field doesn't really matter defensively, like too much less than right field. It's pretty even. Somebody in chat's going, I thought Kidneys was the defense guy. I am, but when it comes to the left field, I think we've seen the meta evolve a little bit where it's somewhere you can kind of try and hide another bat, right? Somewhere where you can try and hide Ty Cobb, and Ty Cobb isn't literally like a huge liability, but compared to a lot of the other outfielders in the game right now, he actually kind of is, right? You know, he's a step below them, not a huge step, but he's definitely a step, right? So that's just kind of where I would consider playing him right now. If I was building my endgame team, probably somewhere I would put him. So I think that's just why I went with it, looking back on it, right? And then center field, right field, I'd just go with war. Like you keep saying, let it sort it out for me. I think I've leaned in this week maybe to go for a more offensive heavy approach than I have in past weeks. I think the meta is shifting again a little bit right now. And so I like to see, yes, play Jackie at shortstop and hide Cobb in center field. Exactly. Wait till next year. That's what I'd do. So we'll see. But I think it's shifting more towards offense right now. And I'm kind of interested to see how it plays out.
And then last but not least for the offense, we've got DH. And I'm going OPS. Give me the biggest hitter that I can get. You're going WOBA. And I'll be completely self-deprecating here. This should be WOBA. WOBA is better than OPS, but I'm lazy. and OPS is easier to calculate. And so I'm just trusting that the difference between WOBA and OPS isn't going to steer me wrong, and I'll just go with what's easier for me to tabulate there. But tell us why you go WOBA here.
It's pretty similar. I think WOBA's a little bit more advanced. I was led on to some like a slightly different version of WOBA that I actually quite like a little bit better now, where it has slightly lower weightings, which I think is a little bit more relative to what OOTP puts out versus than the 2010 baseline that most people use for the OOTP WOBA. But yeah, so I've kind of fallen back in love with it after studying it so much the past week. And so I like it a lot more. I figured you'd go OPS because that's what you use on stream a lot. So and it's just more convenient, right? But there really isn't too much of a difference between the two. They do pretty much the same thing. So.
Yep. All right, let's talk pitching. So how do we make decisions on pitching? So for starting pitchers for me, the first thing I look at is FIP, but I will never just put someone in based on FIP if they've got an ugly track record from a whip perspective. I don't want to play with fire. And I feel like pitchers that have very high whips are playing with fire. And I think of guys like 99 Fernando when I say this. 99 Fernando, at least early on, was always extremely competitive from a FIP perspective, but his whip was always just horrific. And I don't want to be dealing with someone who needs to avoid the walks or needs to avoid the long ball just to be able to stay alive here. So I'm going FIP first, and then I'm looking very closely at whip, and I would almost have them on even weightings here, where I want to see good FIP, but I really like to see great whip to go with it. Now you've got FIP and ERA. Tell us why.
So I just think FIP and ERA are interesting just because the relationship is so similar, and I've been like back and forth on. I'm working on revamping pitching right now, and I'm kind of keep going back and forth on what I'm going to end up landing on. Really, FIP is like, FIP is not like the true number, right? It's a little bit more contextualized, and it's got like some AI playing into it with some other numbers, and ERA is like the actual true number. And when we run some regressions and constants on it, it tends to be a little bit more consistent. So I don't know. I haven't like done too much math on it yet. I have to do some more work on it and talk to some more people about it. But there may be a world in which I switch over completely to ERA, and that's just kind of why I listed it there, so I could bring up some discussion about it.
Yeah, I know in real baseball, IRL, that FIP is more predictive for future ERA than past ERA is. Now, as it relates to out-of-the-park statistics and the out-of-the-park engine, that could not continue to be the case. Is that basically what you're saying, that ERA could be a better predictor of future ERA than FIP?
Exactly. That is exactly what I'm saying.
Moving on, we've got middle relievers, and this is kind of a catch-all bucket here. Basically anyone who's not a late game reliever for you. And for me, this is really where I just go whip. I want to see as few base runners on base as possible to avoid, my starter handing it over to someone and then pouring gasoline on a rally, or middle relievers just getting themselves into a lot of trouble in the 6th or 7th inning and letting a game get out of control. And you've gone FIP and whip here yourself.
Yeah, so I went FIP whip. I think just in general, I'm such a Moneyball player at heart in real life that I love whip as a statistic, what it means, what it does. Limiting people on base is just going to limit runs in general unless you're such a low movement player. So, yeah, I mean, it's good, but you got to watch out, if you're letting in too many runs in general too. So I think you got to take both into account.
All right, last we've got closers, and again, a catch-all bucket here. I would put setup guys, stoppers, and closers in this. And Wait Till Next Year was really calling me out on this earlier, and he's absolutely right, that basically control is what I love to see in the back end of a bullpen. And let me tell you why. You work all game, you've tuned your lineup to be the most competitive lineup for those innings 1 through 7, where you're weighting offensive production versus defensive play. And then you play an entirely different game in innings 8 and 9 if you've got your defensive replacement set up similarly to me. And there you're pulling out bats. You're pulling out guys that don't have play percentages commensurate to the positions that they're playing at the high end. And you're bringing in an A-plus defense. And so when I've got my A-plus defense behind me, bring on the balls in play. Bring on someone who's got a very low whip. Bring on someone who's going to let them hit it right into the teeth of my Ozzie shortstop, my Pop Lloyd second base, and my Ken Griffey center, and Willie Mays in right, and Ricky Henderson in left. Let's see if they can find the ground. So I really prioritize whip for my closers and control in general, because I know that I've uniquely got my best possible defense out in those moments. And so the last thing I want to do is give free passes and not make those guys earn their way on base.
Yep, and the same thing for me. I run a lot of defensive subs. It's how I like to play the game. I bring in my best defense at the end of the game. So when I'm looking at a closer, I want somebody that's just not going to let people on base, got the lowest whip kind of possible of a profile. I like to have guys, maybe if, on my kind of budget, like a Raleigh Fingers that's not going to let up walks. He kind of keeps people off of base in those end innings when it's maybe a tight score.
Yep. So this is how we'd go about building the team. So you've got your data, you've consumed the community content, you've done the work to unearth these metrics, to present these metrics to you by the players, and now you need to pick the players themselves. So here, this would be our first pass at building the team. And then after the team is built, you're not just picking one guy, you're picking 26 guys. And so it's not just picking the single best guy for each of these, but then you need to put in the work to figuring out your platoons. Which positions are you going to platoon? Which guys are not going to start versus any lineup, but are going to be a defensive replacement or a pinch runner. And that's really where you're building around the margins of your team from an offensive perspective. And then from a rotation perspective, you need to not only select your players, but figure out what set of sliders will put those players in the best position to be successful. What types of hooks do you have on your starting pitchers? What types of pitch counts do you have on them? Do you have good balance in your bullpen between a right-handed pitching and left-handed pitching? And based on your starting rotation and their handedness, do you have a bullpen that's going to be in position to face the types of hitters that they're likely going to be facing? Like if you've got an all-righty rotation, you had better have some lefties in that bullpen. What other thoughts do you have about team building there, Kidneys?
Yeah, so you just got to make sure that your roster is kind of balanced versus each side, right? You don't have too many of one side, too many of the other, like you were just touching on. You have the proper amount of, what-sided bullpen compared to your starters, right? Don't over platoon or you might get exploited by some of the better managers. Things like that, right? Just try and play balanced is probably my advice more for tournaments in this kind of a setting is what I would do.
Yep. And for anyone who wants to clip this image before it goes away and have it in full fidelity, let me hide our heads for a second. There we go. So clip away now. Again, you'll be able to grab this on the video on demand. And here we come back. And thanks for the love there, Walnut. All right, so that is how we build our team. So good luck to you guys in the PTCS. I don't know that the prizes have been announced. I could be wrong on that, but I'm sure that whatever the prizes are, they're going to be great. Kidneys, have we heard on that? Is it going to be Cy Young again at the top of it, or have we not heard?
I don't believe we've heard the prize yet. I believe you said it would be something different and new for the top prize, but I don't believe we have info on what that is yet. Maybe next stream.
Okay. And we do have a question in the chat from Lipitor Kid saying, do you think opposite bullpens are better for cheese teams than all one-side pitching staffs?
Yeah, for sure. I know on my team I run lefty cheese, and I think my entire bullpen but one pitcher is right-handed, so the opposite of my 5 left-handed starters. So,
All right.
API says it was confirmed to be a hitter. Is the reward for winning this year, or not this year, this season. So
perfect. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us tonight. That's our entire show. I hope you guys loved the card breakdown. I hope you enjoyed OK Boomer, OK Zoomer. And I hope you loved our PTCS team building guide, if you will. Definitely had a lot of fun bringing it to you. So much support in the chat tonight. Let me call out a couple folks. MacJax, Crash, Walnut. They won the Bit War. And then Real Simple Hunter gifted out 7 subs tonight. Thank you to Simple. Chuck and Wes did 5 as well. So thanks a ton there. Definitely very humbled and appreciative of all the support that you guys give to the stream. It definitely encourages us to keep going and keep trying to find new ways to bring you guys interesting and educational content. If this was your first time joining us on the stream, please do hit the follow. Please hit the notification so you know when we go live, and you can hang out with us on our regularly scheduled programming. Kidneys, final thoughts for tonight.
Had a great time. Love Wade Boggs. He's one of the hitter profiles that I love to see, so I'm happy he's in the game now. Probably be this time next week. I'll be back in gold thanks to the power of DLL, so be looking forward to talking to you guys from there again. Stash is probably not here to stay, well, not as much as I know you'd love it, so probably be gone by the time you see me again. But yeah, it was a great stream. Thanks everyone for coming out. I love seeing you guys around.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I need to let my stash go until people can actually see it, but I don't know that the wife would really love that, so I'll probably kill mine as well. Kill what's there for it. All right, guys, so next broadcast is going to be Tuesday with Reading Between the Lineups with Pidge. Certainly hope you guys will join us, and with that, we're out of here.